For more developments on Lebanon, let's bring in Aaron David Miller. He's a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and also the former State Department Middle East analyst. Great to have you with us today, Aaron. It's a pleasure. Now, we're in the midst, of this 10-day ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah, and yet we are hearing reports of that being violated on both sides. So this so-called truce is really hanging by a thread here. Do you see this lasting the full 10 days?
Ceasefires in the Middle East, particularly in Lebanon, are made to be broken. It's a real tragedy, clearly, for Lebanese civilians and for the residents of northern Israel. Look, it's a temporary palliative, if that, and it's intimately connected, it seems to me, to the broader issue of U.S.-Iranian negotiations. If, in fact, those negotiations produce, and you end up with an extension of the ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran, which is due to expire, I believe, on the 21st or the 22nd of April, then I think there's reasonable prospects for an extension of the ceasefire in Lebanon. The President Trump has made it unmistakably clear that he's incredibly frustrated with Israel's military activities and has said so publicly using language that I've never heard before. With regard to a U.S. president talking about the policies of an Israeli prime minister. So I think there's a reasonable chance if the broader U.S.-Iranian negotiations, which frankly right now seem to be not on track for any short-term success, I think the two are linked. The Israelis don't want to admit it, and the Americans are reluctant to do so, but they are linked. And Lebanon's fate, I think, is tied inextricably now to what happens on the broader U.S.-Iranian front.
Let's talk about, the Sergeant Florian Montorio, who was killed on Friday while serving with UNIFIL, the UN mission in Lebanon. Now, why was he a target? And if it was Hezbollah behind the attack, what do they achieve by doing this?
Look, in 1978, when UNIFIL was created, the French were incredibly important. They are not the largest troop contributor, but they punch far above their weight. They lend political legitimacy to this and military expertise. Since 1978, I think there have been almost 400 UNIFIL peacekeepers who have died in service, not all from hostile actions, just under 100, I believe. This particular death occurred near the Litani River. The French are normally tapped with monitoring activity along the blue line, right, the Israeli-Lebanese border, so they are usually on the knife's edge. I think this particular incident, and I don't have any or all of reliable or credible reports of what happened. I think the French peacekeeping team was clearing ordnance and came under small arms fire. The French president said Hezbollah is responsible. I have no reason to believe that is not the case. And look, you have problems in command and control in Hezbollah. Who knows the circumstances in which they opened fire?
So UNIFIL's, stated mission is to oversee the withdrawal of Israeli troops from southern Lebanon and, restore peace and security in the area. I think it's safe to say that this has not been very successfully carried out. Would you say that its presence has been rendered meaningless given the recent state of events?
That's the view, I think, of Hezbollah and clearly much of the government of Israel. Because it is only allowed to defend itself and it's not permitted to engage in demilitarization or decommissioning or offensive military actions, yes, its role is going to be limited. Look, at some point, you need a broader understanding between the governments of Lebanon and Israel. And unfortunately, this is a problem that has been around for years. The Lebanese government, even though it has been bolder with respect to dealing with Hezbollah and more willing, as negotiations between the ambassadors last week in Washington suggested, to deal directly with the Israelis, the Lebanese government does not have the will right now, or I would argue the capacity, to demonstrate that will to forcibly decommission or demilitarize Hezbollah. There's a real fear, a legitimate fear, of sectarian tensions and violence. The Lebanese army is one of the most respected institutions in the country. but it also reflects sectarian balance in Lebanon. I think there's a great fear of civil strife. The Israelis, on the other hand, have demonstrated over the years they cannot, since '82, since Hezbollah was created. At best, they can keep Hezbollah at bay. '93, '96, 2008, the recent ceasefire in the fall of 2024, Hezbollah is down but not out. The Iranians still believe it may not be Iran's billion-dollar proxy because of the destruction and devastation that this round has resulted in as a consequence of Israeli and U.S. military strikes, but it will cling to doing whatever it can to support Hezbollah and to rebuild its influence there.
So there are those who say, UNIFIL is effectively a lame duck because of its strained relations with Israel and also its failure to prevent Hezbollah's military buildup. And the fact that, as you just mentioned, the fact that it doesn't have any support from the Lebanese government, which lacks willpower, doesn't help at all. Now, with UNIFIL's mandate coming to an end at the end of 2026, will it not make a big difference then for Lebanon if this is not renewed?
They keep renewing the UNIFIL mandate. I suspect, I'll take a flyer here, I suspect given the uncertainties, they'll renew it once again. UNIFIL served a purpose. It may have outlived that purpose, but in essence, the broader issue here, the security of northern Israel, the return of the scores of thousands of Lebanese residents that have been driven from their homes, sometimes willfully, a willful policy on the part of the government of Israel. The broader Lebanon problem is not going to be resolved in and of itself. Lebanon is still, to a large degree, under the influence of Iran. Some would call it an Iranian colony. The Iranian ambassador, the Lebanese government wanted pushed out of the country, is still resident there. It's part of the broader Iranian, Israeli, U.S. triangle. And I suspect as long as you have an Iranian regime in Tehran committed to projecting its influence in at least 4 Arab capitals, Beirut is one of them.
Great to hear your thoughts. I'm sorry, I'm afraid
you're going to have a problem in Lebanon.
Great to hear your thoughts. Thank you very much. That's all we have time for, but we appreciate you coming on the show today. Thank you very much.
Thanks.